Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Sunday Matinee. This is Halloween. Um, I should probably just do I'm going to do a bunch of Halloween episodes, but I should really just do 3 Halloween episodes and just call them episodes 6, 6, and 6. So maybe we'll do that. What do I have to say? So joining me this evening, returning for the 4th time, I think now, is Sarah Michelson. Sarah Moore. I'm so used to
It's all good. Either one's good.
And coming back from the Marvel episode is Andrea Gordon.
I have Halloween earrings. They're bats. I don't know if you can see them. There they are. Yeah, all decked out.
Hey, you're more, well, I got a shirt and we'll see that later. But you're right now you're more prepared than the rest of us.
I so should have grabbed Halloween earrings. I feel bad now. Maybe, yeah, we'll see.
I know you. I'm sure you have some. I know how you roll. And joining us for the first time is Jeanette Sanchez Eisenman, one of our good friends.
Hi.
Welcome, Jeanette.
Earrings.
It's all good. So yeah, we're on the first Halloween episode. Behind me, to probably, I don't know, your left or right, I can't tell. I don't know how these camera things work. There's Frankenstein with the Santa hat. And I decided to throw some special Nosferatu pumpkin and Raven decorations behind me for the next month to block out James Bond. We don't need James Bond for Halloween. All right. So we're the Sunday Matinee. You can follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/truthinfilm or film is truth, one of the two. I can't remember. On Twitter at at Sunday_matinee. You can tell I don't check my own social media sites that much. And we are also on YouTube. So please subscribe to YouTube if you want to watch some ridiculous stuff with people who just love talking about movies. So that's all the housekeeping stuff. So we're going to start with some news. One thing I wanted to mention, mostly in the news, we're doing COVID related stuff because that's kind of all there is right now with cinema in the world. So some good news that we were going to talk about last week before I had to cancel last week's episode was The Batman has resumed production. Robert Pattinson has been cleared. He had tested positive for COVID and he's back filming on the set. So good for him. That's great. So last week, the box office was once again dropping for Tenet. And the same is true this week. This week, Tenet is looking like it's going to make, I had this up on my phone. Where'd it go? 3.4 million. It started with about 19 its opening weekend and has over the weeks dropped pretty significantly, which is kind of contradictory to the theory that studios want their big movies to have legs and perform well over the course of months now instead of just a couple weekends. I'm not surprised. No one really wants to go see a movie, which is a good thing. But good news for Tenet. So when it opened, Warner Brothers would not allow areas that were closing down their indoor theaters to play Tenet at drive-ins. They seem to be loosening those restrictions because Tenet is now playing at a drive-in down in Shelton, which is about 50 so miles south of me. And I have a ticket to see it tomorrow night. So it's going to be the first movie that I have seen since March, since literally the day that we started lockdown. So that's
so
really
lucky.
It's really great. There need to be more drive-ins. And it's playing with Bill and Ted. So that should be a fun night. So that's great. On the bad side of things, because there's going to be a lot of bad news, Disney has pushed back the release date once again of several films, most notably Black Widow, which was scheduled to open. Oh gosh, it was scheduled to open at the end of October, I believe. November 6th. It was scheduled to open November 6th and has now been moved to May 7th, which is 2021, which is basically a full year out from its original release date. So that's pretty big. I think Disney is playing it smart. I think they're watching what's going on with Tenet. And I don't think they want to throw it onto Disney Plus the way they kind of unceremoniously did with Mulan. I don't even know if they can afford to do that. They really need Black Widow to make money. So that's kind of, once again, shuffles the whole Marvel release schedule. Eternals has been moved to November 5th, 2021. Shang-Chi got moved from May to July. So Eternals and Shang-Chi kind of switch places. Let's see what else. Death on the Nile from 20th Century Fox got moved from October 23rd to December 18th. And those are really the big moves that Disney made. It's a little bit upsetting because this may mean that with this reshuffle, I may not get to go see Thor: Love and Thunder on my birthday in 2022 because I'm sure that's going to get delayed now too. We'll see. So I've heard a lot from Sarah and Andrea on like what's going on with movies getting delayed. Jeanette, what is your take on when do you want to go back? I know you want to go back and see movies. We all want to go back. What is your take on when we should go back?
I'm of the pretty firm opinion that it won't be safe to go back until we've got the virus completely under control. And the way things are going, I don't know. I'm down in New Mexico right now with my family, and sometimes I go into stores and there's people with masks on, and sometimes they have them down around their necks. And that doesn't give me a lot of hope that we're going to be back in movie theaters in any regular, or live theaters for that matter, on any regular basis until later 2021. And I'm okay with that, but I'm really jonesing for some movie popcorn and some Milk Duds. And I know I can get both of those things and make them. Well, not Milk Duds. I can't make Milk Duds, but I can buy them. But they've been a pretty poor substitution for just that experience of sitting in a movie theater with other people and watching something. Yeah. So I'm glad that studios are taking some responsibility and delaying things. I'm excited to see when they find creative ways to market and screen movies. And my family and I all sat down and watched Bill and Ted, it was amazing to be able to do that as a family again. Because I normally live up in Tacoma, and so I don't get to see things with my big brother, and we used to go to movies all the time. So in some ways, COVID's great because it brought me back to being able to see movies with my big brother. We're looking forward to Dune. That's the next looking forward to seeing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't watched the trailer yet because I was told don't watch it on your phone. So I'm gonna have to throw it up on my TV at some point.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty epic.
Yeah, he is one of my favorite directors. Denis, I can't pronounce his last name. Denis Villeneuve. Blade Runner 2049 was amazing. Arrival, Sicario, Prisoners, like everything he's done is just, I don't know why he doesn't get talked about more in the same like vein as like Christopher Nolan does. Because yeah, he's something else. So yeah, we seem to all be in agreement that it is not time to go back. We've talked about a lot. It'd be really great if some of these movies that are kind of getting trickled out maybe get a release in a drive-in theater next summer. It's going to be a shame because in about a month, drive-ins are going to start closing because the weather is going to be terrible here, or at least terrible for drive-ins. I miss the rain. But yeah.
I think it would be nice if they got like a re-release in the theater next summer. Like,
well, I mean that too.
Yeah. But,
if it's safe next summer, yeah, absolutely. We definitely, especially for Tenet, which it's going to be great to see it at a drive-in, but I want to see it in IMAX. That's just how it's filmed. So
I'm expecting summer 2021 might be a season of a lot of new outdoor theater venues showing some of the things from 2020. That's what I would expect.
Yeah, I hope so. I know I don't know of too many around here right now. I think there's one up in Bellingham in oh shoot, that one little district over by Western Washington.
I don't think it's particularly safe for them right now, but next summer.
Oh, you mean they used to have like a little outdoor theater at Fairhaven Green.
Yes.
It's not a huge area, and you can't drive into it. You have to like sit. So I don't know they might have still been doing movies, but I'm guessing they probably couldn't let as many people in because they would have had to distance people.
Yeah.
Well, that's our wonderful weekly bit of gloom. And it's an appropriate week for gloom because this is Halloween, everybody. So my first question to everyone is, and I'm going to go counterclockwise and start with Sarah. What does Halloween mean to you?
Oh boy. Halloween just, how do I even put that? Like, it means like joyous awesomeness to me. Like, it's by far my favorite holiday. I mean, I like Christmas too, but I'm definitely like all about Halloween. It's just, it's creepy, it's fun, it's dark, it's it's just like all the things I love. So Halloween's awesome. It's pure awesomeness.
And Jeanette?
I would echo that, Sarah. I think of it as a return to that darkness. And for me, fall is always a time where I find myself going into contemplation mode. And that's always nice. I like crisper air. I was a school nerd, so I love the back to school. I'm also sadly one of those pumpkin spice latte women, so I always have at least one. Usually I limit myself to one. I love Dia de los Muertos, which that comes right on the heels of Halloween. Although I wasn't raised a Catholic, so I don't have the same relationship to it that a lot of people of my background to do. And I got married on November 1st, so Halloween's always wedding eve for us. And yeah, it's just a really special time.
And Andrea?
Halloween is literally my favorite holiday of all time ever. No questions asked. I like the spooks and the treats. And fall is my favorite season. So like just the colors and my favorite fall drink is the apple cinnamon spice. I don't even know if they have it at Starbucks anymore, but I love the apple cinnamon spice. And Halloween pretty much involves all my favorite things in the world, which is candy and wearing weird costumes. So like if I get an excuse to dress like an idiot for a day, like I'm gonna do it. So like I could wear whatever the heck I want to and beg strangers for candy. It's like the dream holiday. So I love it, and I can watch Twilight Zone with no excuses. And there's like, I don't know, there's like nothing bad about it in my opinion. The only bad thing is that it's cold here, and all the pre-packaged women's costumes at Halloween stores are super short and slutty, and you can't wear that here because it's freezing. So that's my only conundrum about Halloween, but there's very few. I love it so much.
Halloween is definitely my favorite holiday. It definitely stems a lot from my dad was a huge Halloween nut. That is not my Frankenstein bust. That is his. He carved that Nosferatu pumpkin himself. He was an absolute crazy Halloween nut, and I was raised on all those classic monster movies. So to me, Halloween is a perfect excuse to just sit down and just watch my favorite monster movies from the 30s, 40s, and up through the 60s. And we'll talk about Halloween movie aesthetics in a moment. But candy is amazing. My dad used to work at Target, and he called Halloween the start of candy season. It goes through Christmas and then Valentine's Day and then Easter, and then candy season would be over for 6 months. Lots of candy. I Haven't dressed up much in the past couple years, but I do like it. I love when I have like 5 minutes to like put something together and I'm like, okay, what do I have? And it's never as impressive as a lot of people, but it's fun. So we used to have bamboo out in the front yard, and like I remember I would dress up as like Frankenstein monster or the Wolfman, and I would hide somewhere in our front yard. And I would try to scare kids and their parents as they approached the doorway. If I tried to do that now, I would probably get shot. I did get kicked. Darth Maul kicked me in the knees one year. So you got to be careful with that. But it is still fun to try and scare the little kids. So yeah, Halloween is amazing. And in this house, Halloween is a year-long thing. All this stuff that's up now is up all year. In this particular room, in this haven of mine.
I remember your dad's like Halloween countdown on Facebook that would start like the day after Halloween.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And typically starting maybe in late July or early August, he would just put on Nightmare Before Christmas, and he would have that on as like the background noise in the house for every single day. So that was always a treat. So yeah, Halloween is clearly important to all of us. It is the best. So let's go back to our childhood here, our collective childhood. I'm really curious because I think some of this is kind of funny for me. What movies scared you as a child, and were they supposed to be scary movies? Because I can tell you the ones that scared me were not supposed to be scary movies. We'll just go counter again, Sarah.
The movie I remember scaring me the most in my childhood that like sticks out is Return to Oz. That movie like terrified me when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, the Wheelers, 100%. Jeanette?
See, I grew up and was a kid in the 80s, and so we were still in the Cold War. And I grew up in northwestern New Mexico, where we have a lot of power plants, coal and uranium mines. And so I was certain that we were going to get bombed or invaded. So my scariest movies were The Day After, which was a TV movie from 1983 that was about post-nuclear war. And of course, 1984's Red Dawn. Those were the movies that kept me up at night thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen when they drop a bomb on my town? Because they'll have to, because it's a big power plant town. And yeah, I would think about that a lot. I'd been seeing scary movies from the time I was a kid. The earliest ones I remember are Godzilla movies that my parents would take us to. My mom says I would put her hand over my face and then I'd open her fingers so I could stay watching. And I remember seeing Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978 in the theater with my cousins and my brother and sister. And I slept like a baby, but my brother and my cousin ended up staying with our moms. So yeah, we still tease him about him. I told him I wouldn't mention that, so maybe he won't watch this.
I actually just saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers for the first time last week. And now that I've seen it, I've been thinking, how did I let this one pass me by for all these years? It's so good.
Oh, Donald Sutherland.
Yep. Absolutely. And young Jeff Goldblum, it's always a treat to see him, because like he's one kind of those other people like Paul Rudd who kind of doesn't age. He's definitely aged more than Paul Rudd, but like between Body Snatchers and Jurassic Park, which is like 15 years, it doesn't look like he aged much at all.
No.
Andrea.
The only thing I remember about Invasion of the Body Snatchers is that GIF. I think it's from the end of the movie when Donald Sutherland's like, yeah, everybody does it. Okay. Anyway, what I actually don't remember being scared of anything in my childhood, but my mom has consistently told me that I was actually afraid of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, the Disney cartoon from 1991. Apparently he would step out of the shadows and I was like, ah! And I couldn't finish the movie. Now it's one of my favorite movies, but I must have thought it was terrifying because I even blocked it out of my memory because I remember seeing it for the first time when I was like 11. So it must have been pretty traumatizing for me that I was afraid of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, which is interesting. If you know me, which I don't think many of you know me that well, but I'm a huge Disney nerd. So I think it's really ironic that that's what scared me. And I actually think it's pretty funny.
Well, Sarah, you hit the nail on the head. I was also going to say Return to Oz because of those stupid wheelers. Like,
And the queen that like switched heads, I remember being really like freaked out by that.
Princess Mombi, particularly when she rises from the bed and is just headless. I was like, oh my God. You know, why did my parents let me watch this? This is horrifying. And how many parents out there back in the day sat their children down to watch this thinking, oh, it's going to be just like the Judy Garland musical.
I'm sure that's what my parents thought, because my parents were not into horror at all. Like, so they probably thought it was just like, oh, this is gonna be a cute Wizard of Oz movie.
The other ones, two of them actually are scary movies. Daya and I talked about this a lot when we did Psycho. I saw Psycho when I was like 4, and that seriously traumatized me for many years. So yeah, I was definitely not, it wasn't until I hit double digits that I was like, okay, I'm going to take a shower now. Cause yeah, that movie really does do for showers what Jaws does for oceans. But one of the ones that isn't really scary, it's another Disney one, is actually that they're very short animated version of Peter and the Wolf. Because that wolf, I thought that wolf was suddenly going to be representative of every actual wolf out in the world. And then, of course, I go to the Point Defiant Zoo and there's the wolves there. And it's like, oh, these things aren't, trying to hop the fence and tear me to shreds. But that was pretty scary. And, of course, one of the only black and white classic ones to scare me when I was a kid, and still kind of does, is The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
That was on Turner Classic Movies last night, and I watched it. I just wanted you to know that.
It is one of my absolute favorites. It's a good one. But I remember seeing that as a kid, and I think I once again waited till I was double digits old to sit down and actually watch it again. And it wasn't like, it really wasn't any of the scenes where you see it, but it's that scene in the beginning where it comes out of the water and it kills the 2 guys in the tent, and you can't see it, and it's just like that. The roar is absolutely the most horrifying part of that whole movie.
Can you imagine seeing it in 3D in the 50s when it was in 3D?
I don't know how good 3D was back then, and of course we never will know. But I can tell you that I have the Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray does include a 3D version. Unfortunately, I do not have a 3D capable television because they're expensive and useless. For the 5 movies out there that I would ever watch in 3D. So yeah, lots of scary movies that aren't supposed to be scary. Looking at you, Return to Oz. Red Dawn, that's a good one too, though. That's a completely different context of what is scary. Which kind of what's going to lead us into what is your Halloween aesthetic when it comes to movies? Again, counterclockwise.
Oh boy. Occasionally I enjoy like the fun ones like Hocus Pocus or like Frankenweenie, but I'm definitely a like 70s and 80s slasher flick all the way. Like I usually watch Nightmare on Elm Street like every Halloween, and the original Halloween, and more recently a favorite has been Trick or Treat. But yeah, I'm all about the classic slasher movies.
So yeah, I like things that are spooky. Lots of ghosts. I like that. I like looking at complex layered shots. So maybe the second or third time I'll notice something in the background that I didn't notice my first time around. I like to point out Insidious for that one, with just like you'll see the camera pan around a room and you're like, oh crap, what was that? So I like that kind of aesthetic. I don't have any particular Halloween aesthetic though. I'm the only person I know in the world who doesn't really like Hocus Pocus. Sorry. I wish I could, because everything about it seems like something I should like. I do like to be afraid of the dark for a while after I've seen a movie.
I guess mine's pretty lame because I like the family friendly stuff, because I don't do well with jump scares. And I really don't like movies that rely on that to scare you. Like a lot of the movies like now have like, they're not particularly scary, but they'll just rely on you not expecting it to happen. And then it just kind of ruins the terrifyingness of it. I also like the fun and the comedy. Jeanette, I'm actually not a huge fan of Hocus Pocus either, which is weird because it's totally my generation that it appeals to. I don't hate it, and I will watch it if it's on, but everyone's like obsessed with it, and I'm like, I love Bette Midler and Kathy Najimy, and I love them. I'm like, cool, I watched it. Now what? But yeah, I like the funny ones. So like Halloween humor and Halloween like naturally scary, and I like the ghosts and the hauntings too, because it seems like the most realistic kind of scary thing. So that's my aesthetic, the spooky aesthetic.
Well, as already seems to have been mentioned, I run with the super duper old school. As early as 1925 Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney, up through the Hammer films with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, and everything in between. I'm not big on the slasher films, actually. I love Psycho. The first slasher movie is incredible. The original Halloween is great, but I never got into Elm Street or Friday the 13th. I've seen some of the Friday the 13th movies, but not the first one, and the sequels are pretty bad.
The first one, yeah, those are definitely kind of cheesy. They can be enjoyable, like in the right mood. They're kind of cheesy. And for Nightmare on Elm Street, I only like the first one. The rest suck. And the remake was horrible. But the very original one is pretty underratedly creepy, I would say. There's really only a couple really gory scenes in it. I would say it's pretty underratedly creepy.
I actually have Nightmare on Elm Street as on my list of top 5s. But
yeah, it's a great movie. The first one, all the sequels. I don't know.
It's pretty fun. Dream Warriors came out when I was a teenager, so seeing it in the movie theater was, I'd say it's up there with the first one. Everything else is kind of, unless you take a look back at them with a critical lens of looking at how they were exploring homosexuality, most of the other ones are not really worth watching. No. But
I did enjoy New Nightmare. That one was kind of interesting, but
yeah.
Just the kind of meta. It was definitely a forerunner to like Scream, kind of the meta, like we're like real people within a movie, and then the person in the movie is like, so it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. The first Elm Street though has so many great little like one-liners that come out of it that I don't know. My husband and I are stuck on the "I'm your boyfriend now" thing. And so we do that all the time in lots of different contexts. So like my dog will jump on my mom and Sam and I will look at each other and he'll be like, "I'm your dog now."
I think how they
take out of context.
Yeah. I think how they did too that like the scene with the friend when she's being attacked by him in the dream, and they had like the room that like rotated, so she's like crawling up that's pretty amazing how they did that. And when they did the remake and they just CG'd her flying around, it was like, that is so bad. Like the first one looks so creepy and awesome, and the remake, the CG was like laughable.
That's probably why the classic horror movies are so much better, because they use practical effects instead of CGI.
Yeah, no, I'm totally not a fan of modern. I think the most modern slasher movie I enjoyed was Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
fun.
The only slasher movie I've seen is Scream. So, and I refuse to watch the second one because of Randy Meeks. So,
I don't blame you for that. I would like to unwatch the second one.
So yeah, my other aesthetic is I also just love good scripts with memorable characters. There's a particular film I'll talk about with I think has that nailed right down. I also am getting really fond of horror that blends with other genres, particularly comedies. I love Shaun of the Dead, Slither, Warm Bodies is a fun one. So yeah, I because I think that's one of the directions that horror is going to have to go is sort of blending with other genres that you don't traditionally think of with horror. We've had gothic horror, we've had sci-fi horror, we've had slasher horror. Now we've got comedy horror. What's next?
Western.
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a Western horror film.
Well, that would be what is that? Westworld. Westworld is kind of in that genre.
It's Westworld is definitely. I haven't seen the TV show, but the original movie is very creepy.
I think From Dusk to Dawn
You
fits
should
in that.
creepy too.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
Dusk Till Dawn. I forgot about that. That's a good one. Okay. Well, since we're talking about actual movies now, let's kind of move on to our top five. And so, how this is going to work, if you're watching, I had everyone pick 5 of their favorite Halloween themed films and some backups just in case we have any overlap. So, we're just going to go around in our little fun counterclockwise circle and go one at a time and then keep going until we're done with our list. So, Sarah, that means you get to go first.
I get to go first. Oh man, we already talked about my favorite, which is Nightmare on Elm Street. That would probably be my that's my top horror or movie I always like to watch at Halloween.
It was my number 4, so it was on there.
It didn't make mine only because, like I said, the slasher films just weren't my thing. I probably should watch the original Nightmare. I probably should watch the original Friday the 13th. Like I said, I do like the original Halloween, and the new one directed by David Gordon Green, which kind of rebooted the Halloween series, was also pretty good. So, it's not, I don't think the genre is a lost cause, but it's not my thing. I like my monsters to either, be coming back from the dead or turning into weird things under the full moon and not just be some deranged maniac inside a mask.
Freddy is also very funny. He's got some nice zingers.
And I guess Freddy's not just some guy either. Freddy is kind of back from the dead, so to speak.
Yeah. I will admit that I did have a giant Freddy Krueger poster in my closet. He was the monster in my closet. And then when my brother and sister went to college and I had the whole third of the house to myself as the youngest kid, I actually moved all my Freddy Krueger stuff out to our guest bathroom. So the bathroom all my parents' guests had to use had Freddy Krueger stuff, and it was all Nightmare on Elm Street themed, as much as I could be allowed to do that. So I had a few posters and pictures and things up. But yeah. Obviously made an impact in my life and in my parents' guests' lives. So the National Teachers Association people had to meet with their union meetings and use my bathroom. And they're like, "Oh, why'd you, Corey, leave all his stuff here?" And my mom's like, "That's my youngest daughter's stuff."
That's actually something my dad would probably have done too. He actually did have a Psycho shower curtain that would go up for October.
And terrifying.
Oh yeah. Thankfully, I had grown over my fear of showers by then. Andrea, go ahead, Andrea.
I was going to say, do I say a movie? Okay.
Yeah.
Mine aren't in order. I didn't know if they had to be in any order or not. It's just
nope.
Okay, good. It's just 5 Halloween movies that I like, and Ben, I already talked to you about this one, but my absolute favorite, this is actually number 1, so it's the only one that's numbered, but it's Coraline, because Coraline is terrifying. and the other mother when she turns into that spider thing. I still can't sleep after watching that for the first time. It's horrifying, and it makes me never ever want to go into a closet or crawl space or anything like that, just because I would never ever want to see that on the other side.
That's another movie that kind of like Return to Oz is like you take your kids in to see that thinking, oh cool, it's a fun little animated movie from the makers of The Nightmare Before Christmas. So it should be fun. There should be music, and it starts out pretty innocent, but yeah, once you get about an hour into it, you start to realize this is very, very unsettling.
Yeah.
Gotta love doppelgangers. They're a big thing in horror films.
There's the button sewing, the bug eating, the dead children, the dead rats, the talking cat. It's just all crazy.
The thought of getting my eyes sewn shut with a button is, yeah, that may be the worst thing about it. I don't know. I don't want that. No one wants that.
Do not want.
Kind
I
of
do
fits with that Invasion of the Body Snatchers theme, though, of like, join us.
Yep. I guess I'll drop my first film here. So this should, again, no shocker. Some of these aren't going to be classic films, but my first one is The Wolfman, the original with Lon Chaney Jr., not the Benicio del Toro remake, which I actually thought was okay. But of all the old Universal films, I know I'm probably gonna get some crap because people are gonna be like, why didn't you pick Dracula or Frankenstein? Just because those are the two that really launched them and are the only two that are like critically acclaimed. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which is the second film in the Wolfman series, was like the first live action movie that I remember seeing. It probably wasn't the first I actually saw, but it's the first I remember. Probably saw it. I may as well have just known that movie from birth. So when I finally got to see the original when I was maybe 5, it was cool to really go back and see how does it all begin. And I think it's got a very Shakespearean ending. Spoiler alert, everyone, for this. Holy crap! This year it's an 80-year-old movie. This year, I should have done a whole episode about this movie. My bad. Anyway, so at the end of the movie, Larry Talbot's dad ends up killing him. He's been doubting him the whole movie, and then he goes out to hunt the werewolf, kills the werewolf, and it's like, oh, I just killed my son. So it's of all the classic monster movies, it just has the most sort of Shakespearean tragic ending, even more so than Frankenstein, because Universal's Frankenstein, at least the first one, is not terribly tragic. It's actually it has a pretty happy ending where Frankenstein lives and the monster dies, and it's a little Hollywoodish. But also I love the makeup. I love the dissolve tricks with when they filmed it, to just that slow transition, which, nowadays, if you look at it on a nice TV, you can say, oh, I can definitely see how they did this. But the effect, I think the makeup itself is really cool. I think too many werewolf movies these days make the werewolf look like a wolf. So having an actual wolf man that walks on its 2 feet instead of 4 is a little bit more frightening to me. It is kind of weird, though, that he strangely manages to change clothes after he changes into a wolf. But hey, this was the 40s. Continuity. And this is one thing these classic monster movies train me to sort of believe, is that continuity doesn't matter. So anytime someone gets picky about something in the Marvel movies, I just don't care. Because I just go back and be like, well, continuity was terrible in the 30s and 40s. So that's my first pick.
I could throw out my number one scary movie of all time. I just love it. And it's George C. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, 1968. I can watch that movie over and over and over again and still see new things. So I love that. I love what he was doing with very little money and Clearly, it's worked since it's launched so many other movie careers, and basically the zombie film brought it back from the dead. No pun intended. But I was introduced to it in 1990 when I went to a midnight movie with the guy I was dating in high school. And I couldn't sleep for a few weeks after the 1990 version, because for me, monsters had always been that kind of classic movie monster. They don't really come out in the middle of the day. And there's always times when you're safe from the monsters. And zombies were the first monsters that I encountered where there is no safe time. There is no safe place. They will pursue you relentlessly to eat you. And yeah, I didn't sleep for, I think it was probably 3 weeks. And then I watched the 68 version while my parents were not in town. And that restarted the scary movie insomnia, where I was just looking over my shoulder every time I went out of the house. And I really like having that feeling of being haunted by a movie. So
That movie, it's not on my list, but I still think it's an incredible film. It changed everything. I mean, number one, it was, like you said, it was filmed on a budget, but it was filmed in such a way that it looked like a prestige film. But two, before Night of the Living Dead, zombie movies tied back to voodoo.
Yep.
And that's what they were. They were just reanimated bodies that were under the command of some, cult leader. This was the first time where zombies were like rising up from graves and eating, the flesh of the living. It was, and you literally saw them eating the flesh of the living on film. It was gross. I remember we just had a VHS that was just trailers of old horror movies, and my dad deliberately would send me out of the room when the Night of the Living Dead trailer came up, because he didn't want me to see that.
it was fun. A few years ago, I drove with my sister across country from New York to New Mexico, and we went through Pennsylvania, and she's like, I want to go to Gettysburg. And I was like, fine. Then we're hitting Evans City Cemetery as well. If you get to pick a cemetery, I get to pick a cemetery. And so I was just giddy. And the night before, I was like, well, do you even know why I want to see Evans City Cemetery? And she's like, no, what is that? And so I showed her the opening 5 minutes of Night of the Living Dead, and she was like, what? No. And I was like, it'll be fine. It's daylight. We'll be fine. But yeah, it was a lot of fun going up and seeing that location and kind of speculating, which farmhouse was this? But it was a lot of fun.
And pretty much all the sequels that I've seen have also been incredibly good. I've seen Dawn, Day, and Land, and Dawn especially is just a great film. He really hit the ball out of the park with just the themes he was trying to get across.
Diary of the Dead is worth watching.
I've heard that one's good.
Back when my husband and I were just friends and we were going to horror movies together and just having a great time being friends and trying to ignore that we were attracted to each other, we went and saw Diary of the Dead, and man, it was an amazing show in the theater. So it packs a punch because he's always making some social commentary,
yeah,
which I love.
And no one has really quite found the same formula with any zombie movie since. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen the first two, and I can tell you right now, the Resident Evil live action movies are terrible. The games are amazing. The games are pretty creepy. And actually, this is a fun little fact. Apparently, George Romero was supposed to direct the first Resident Evil movie. He had a script and was ready to go, and the studio was like, this is too violent and gory, and we don't want to do this. And apparently his script was actually like followed the first game really well. And it's like, oh man, haunted house with zombies and other weird bio monsters. And instead we got Mila Jovovich as super crazy, genetically modified, awesome, crazy person who can just kick zombies. It's like,
Somehow she's strong enough to like just kick zombies and have them die. I don't know how that works.
Well, I'll tell you, the games get pretty weird too. But so we've talked a lot about zombies. Andrea, let's move on to one of yours, which is probably not going to be zombies.
It's correct. It's going to be Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Not only is the soundtrack for that amazing, but it brings my aesthetic, as previously mentioned before, of the humor and the Halloween. It's not necessarily a Halloween movie, but it has the scary ghosts and the huge end of the world climactic scene and the ever popular beam into the sky that all the movies seem to take now. But the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is probably one of the most terrifying creatures in movies. And what was the other scene? Oh, the one where Bill Murray is describing what would happen if the ghosts got out with the dogs and cats living together. It's probably one of my. It makes me laugh every time I see that. And what was the one? Oh, the one scene that actually really does scare me is the librarian ghost, the very first ghost that we see. Because she's just a sweet old lady that she turns and she's like, and I was like, so yeah, I like Ghostbusters.
I still have nightmares about the librarian ghost.
Scary.
I love her.
Oh yeah, she's terrifying, but it's also hilarious. What did you do, Ray? Might be my favorite line in the movie. Yeah, something as innocent as a mascot can absolutely wreck New York.
I just like the Godzilla noise it makes when it gets destroyed.
This is one of the few movies where I actually really like the reboot of it as well. So I found that to be fun. And as a feminist, it just felt, oh God, so powerful when the gun is licked. I was like, is this what boys feel when their superhero does something big and bad and brave? Because this feels pretty good.
I enjoyed the reboot too, particularly Chris Hemsworth as the dumb secretary. Or the eye candy secretary, I should say.
I still haven't seen the reboot, and I want to. I think I was just too busy in 2016 making the mistake of going to see Suicide Squad instead. But yeah, no, my dad and sister went and saw it, and they loved it. So
Yeah, it was fun.
I should go back through my dad's movies and see if he bought it, because he bought Suicide Squad. So he should have at least bought a movie that he liked.
I wasn't a huge fan of the reboot, but it's just because it really wasn't my taste. I do like the femininity. I did not have a problem with the women kicking ass and taking names and so. And I have a huge crush on Kate McKinnon, so I agree with you, Jeanette. That part was a bit. But I think I just like the original so much that it's hard for me to be like, oh, it wasn't bad, because just I have that biased opinion. But I didn't think it was horrible, and I didn't think it was any fault of anybody in the movie. I just thought the original is hard to top, and I just like it a lot better. But it was enjoyable. I like how the ghosts at the end with the big, huge, giant like Macy's balloon or whatever it was that looked like some voodoo doctor or something. That was kind of creepy, but I mean, again, I'm going off on a tangent about the original. We're talking about the remake. I apologize, but I love I love the original so much.
I don't think the reboot was as spooky as the original. I think the original was a lot scarier in a lot of ways, and it was definitely an original when it came out. There was nothing like it at all. So it's part of my childhood as well. I had they put the cassette soundtrack on a red tape, so I had that at one point. But yeah. Yeah,
and that definitely fits my aesthetic of the horror comedies. mine tend to veer a little bit more toward horror than Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters is definitely a delightful film.
You just said Halloween themed, so
Yeah.
That's what I do.
It has ghosts
Yeah, exactly.
in the title.
Ghostbusters song is on every Halloween playlist I've ever had.
Yep.
Slimer.
Slimer.
Plus, we got the amazing animated series out of it. So you cannot rule out Ghostbusters. So I guess we circled back my way, and I'm going with another classic. I'm kind of cheating this time around because I'm doing a twofer here. So I'm going to talk about the first two Hammer horror films, which are The Curse of Frankenstein, which I don't have a copy of because Warner Brothers has not released it on Blu-ray because they're stupid, and Horror of Dracula, Christopher Lee's first Dracula film. And actually, he played the creature in Curse of Frankenstein. So it was basically Cushing and Lee in both films. Cushing as Frankenstein and then as Van Helsing. And like Hammer is sort of like this wonderful bridge between the black and white films and modern horror. It was the first time we got to see these types of movies in color. It was the first time that we got to see gore on screen, I should say. The old Universal movies really cheat. Like you see these, the Wolfman savagely mauls someone, and then you look at it, it's like, hey, there's no blood there. The Frankenstein monster does not look like it was, it's got a few bits that looks like it'd been sewn together, but it's like there's no blood. They really cheat you out there. Hammer started using copious amounts of blood. I think Hammer films are probably about the bloodiest you can get until Sam Raimi came along with the Evil Dead films. But it was also just like Cushing and Lee were just so dignified in the way they portrayed their characters. For me, Christopher Lee is just the ultimate Dracula. He played the role on film more than anyone else. And Lugosi was a gentleman. Christopher Lee was just, his sheer presence is terrifying. For those of you who don't know who Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee are, Christopher Lee would play Saruman in The Lord of the Rings and Count Dooku in Star Wars. So for you youngins out there, he had a very long and incredible career, but it really, Horror Dracula was really the movie that jump-started that. And he did horror films basically through the 70s and into the 80s. And it really wasn't until Lord of the Rings that he kind of became famous for doing anything else. And same with Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing was in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, as Governor Tarkin. And then his likeness was used once again in Rogue One in a very interesting way. But Cushing just has this perfect voice. Like I look to Peter Cushing when I'm thinking about vocal performances. And I love how Cushing would take these copious notes in his script, and he would literally, when he was doing a Frankenstein film, he would visit his actual his physician and be like, how do I, sew this stuff together? And how do I perform open heart surgery? What do I have to do to take a brain out of this body? And would just take these copious notes. And Christopher Lee, on the other hand, I think was a lot more like most of us now. He would write one note on a page, or he would write, in particular, he would like to write it down which lines he hated. But and that Hammer did so much with so little. They also that was sort of the precursor to Living Dead. Is Hammer films were absolute budget films. There's a staircase in Horror of Dracula that is used in 3 different places in Dracula's castle, and they just redecorated the set. But if you're looking for it, it's like, wait a minute, that's the entrance to the castle. So I think it's brilliant. Their early films, they did so much with so little, and just absolutely some of the best production design you'll see in the early horror films, and also sort of precursors to sort of the look of films like Crimson Peak. Crimson Peak is very much a Hammer-like film. And I know this film gets a little crap from a lot of theater people, but when Tim Burton did Sweeney Todd, he said
I love
that
it, Sweeney Todd.
he said, I wanted to make a Hammer musical. And his films actually too have a very Hammer aesthetic, even though I'm not always a huge fan, but he also loved to cast Christopher Lee in small roles whenever he could. Like in, I think he's in Sleepy Hollow. He's in Willy Wonka. So yeah, like those Hammer films, you can definitely see the dip in quality once you get into the late 60s and early 70s when they decided it was time to bring Dracula into modern England, which I can tell you it doesn't work. I've rambled on way too much about these films. Sarah, what is your next film?
My next film is kind of in the same line with Andrea's last one, a classic horror comedy, which would be Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice? Do we say it one more time?
Yes.
Beetlejuice. Where's Michael?
Oh, and we were just talking about Tim Burton.
Beetlejuice. I've only seen Beetlejuice all the way through once, but it's also a great film. Absolute tangent. Those of us in right now who watch Community, did you catch the Beetlejuice bit in Community? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't watch Community, sorry.
They say it.
it's really fun.
They say Beetlejuice once in an episode for the first 3 seasons, and in the third season 3 episode where they say Beetlejuice's name, he walks past them in the background.
I've seen a meme of that though, so I do know what you're talking about. Has
Yeah, that
anyone
was-
listened to the cast recording though? The Broadway musical. I encourage you to listen to it. It's amazing.
And who'd have thought that it'd be Michael Keaton too?
Yeah.
Like, Tim Burton really knew how to use Michael Keaton back in the 80s. That was brilliant. And Winona Ryder,
Yeah.
the cast of that film is just gold. And it's a funny
And
movie.
Catherine O'Hara, right, was in it, and
Jeffrey Jones.
yeah, Jeffrey Jones,
Oh.
Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Hey, yo.
Yes.
My first non-babysitting job was at a video store, and Beetlejuice would be something I'd start playing in October just because it was safe to play. There wasn't so much gore that people would complain. It was funny enough that people would stop and watch it for a little while at the counter, but yeah, it was one of my regulars.
I definitely remember seeing it for the first time kind of when I was an age where I was starting to get more into adult movies. I kind of moved out of like the family children's movies. And I remember my mom being like, "Oh, there's a couple kind of scary parts in this. I don't know." And I watched it, I'm just like, "This isn't scary." This is just funny.
Nah, I don't think
I love the whole handbook for the dead thing, and like, I don't know, just when they go into like the waiting room, there's like all the different dead bodies. Like, it's just
My
pretty
puppy was
That's
Beetlejuice
so
for Halloween last year. Got a little wig and everything.
And of course, all the wonderful practical stop motion effects in that movie.
No CGI.
Yeah.
Yep. We were just hitting that corner where CGI was about to explode.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know, that's why they're just so much better in the 80s. Like, horror movies were just so much better in the 80s.
yeah, it occasionally works, but you really have to know when to use CGI in a horror movie. And it's kind of like the same with sci-fi. Well, I think you can get away with it more in sci-fi, but yeah, with horror, you definitely, I think, get a lot more effect from those practical effects.
Yeah, well,
Definitely.
and like, see, like that was with the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, the CG blood that would be like just didn't even look like. I mean, it looked like it was animated. I don't know.
Blood is
think-
also one of the easiest practical effects to
I know, and it's like super easy, and it has such a great effect when you just like put fake blood on somebody, but you CG it, it's just looks weird.
Jeanette?
I'm going to
Yeah.
take us into the 21st century now with mine. So there's a couple of things. One is sometimes I don't think rated R movies are as scary as PG-13. So that's the first component of this next movie. But also I've been, having been raised on slasher films and kind of spooky films, I am not used to other countries' aesthetics of horror. And so when I first started seeing J horror and K horror, so Korean horror movies, they were scarier to me than anything I'd seen in a long time. So my first movie on that in that genre is The Ring in 2002, and I only just watched it right before, I guess it was in the beginning of July this year. Like, I haven't watched it since I saw it in the movie theater in 2002 until this year because it freaked me out so bad. And it's just that different aesthetic, that different way of doing camera shots and telling a story that make it just strange enough that it's not comfortable for me. And then a couple weeks ago, I watched Train to Busan from last year for the first time, and it's everything that I love about modern horror and contemporary horror. And yeah, I commute from Tacoma to Seattle for work, usually when we're working in person. And that movie had so many things from my imagination of riding that stupid sounder train and just imagining zombies attacking people outside or in the cars of the train, that, yeah, those feed into my imagination and then I can't get rid of them. So every time I think of The Ring, I think of like, how many times have I seen a ladder against a wall? And all the other little components, and then I get freaked out. So
I haven't seen The Ring since 2000, I think maybe 2003. I think I saw it a year later at home, but I did watch it in this room by myself at like 1 a.m. So that was pretty creepy to watch by myself with the lights down on an old tube TV at that.
Yeah, I didn't watch the second one, but they had this crazy marketing campaign where people left VHS tapes at bus stops, and one of my friends found one, and it was the trailer for The Ring 2, but it had all these like little markings on the VHS tape. And so we watched that, and that was pretty creepy. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to see this because I might not survive it.
I did see the second one in the theaters, and I don't remember it terribly well. I don't think I liked it that much. Just kind of a retread, basically, of a lot of the stuff you see in the first one. Plus, I think it was the second one had a really hokey deer that she hits a deer on the road in the middle of the night and was like, oh, that deer is very fake. Like that was
That links us to the opening scene of Train to Busan. Yay!
I need to see that, and I generally need to see more J and K horror films. I didn't get into them back when they were becoming popular in the States when The Ring came out because they were a fad, and I was, at that stage in my life where fads aren't cool.
You're a hipster?
I was a total hipster. I was only going to watch my 1930s and 40s films. Thank you.
I highly recommend. It's a series of 3 shorts in one film. It's called Doomsday Book. It's Korean, and the first film is a short zombie film, and it's pretty fantastic. Like it's a total critique on the evolution of humans and the damage we do to our environment. It's beautiful. And then the rest of them are also pretty good too. So
I need to see more of those type of films as well. I can't remember what subgenre they're in, but there was another studio in Britain that used to make like a film that was just 3 short stories. That's what they pumped out year after year, were just short stories all stitched together into one movie.
Anthologies.
And yeah, thank you, anthologies. I know,
There's
Jeanette,
a-
I read. Oh, go ahead.
There's a Netflix series called 2 Sentence Horror Stories. Totally worth it. I haven't made it through all of them because the one that was produced by Japanese filmmakers freaked me out. So I'm kind of putting those on hold for now.
Jenna, I know I've talked to you about this one, but the one Korean horror film I recommend, which I thought was amazing and very, very unsettling, is called Thirst. It is a Korean vampire film, and it is oof. Because he's a priest. He's a vampire priest.
Yay.
Yeah, that's always fun. Okay.
I like that horror always flips safe spaces into not safe spaces. You should be safe in the shower. You should be safe with a priest. You're not.
Yep. You're not safe
You
anywhere
should be
in horror
safe in a
films.
library. You should be safe in your own home. Nope.
Nope. Well, let's move on. Let's move on to Andrea's next film, in which we might be safe if it's one of our more lighthearted films. Is it?
I was gonna do Nightmare Before Christmas as my next one, but you were talking about bloody vampire movies, so I'm gonna move to my vampire movie that I actually have on my list, and that is the original 1984 Fright Night. Whatever year it was 80 something, but that's because we were talking about practical effects, and boy, when Chris Sarandon turns into that vampire, I'm like, and the girlfriend at the end when she turns into that vampire, I'm like, oh gosh, there's a lot of good stuff in that. I love Chris Sarandon, and I think he's perfectly evil as the vampire. And Roddy McDowall, whom I also love, is also great in it. And I did see the remake of it, and I was kind of disappointed with it because I love Anton Yelchin, Colin Farrell, and David Tennant, and they were all okay. But I think it was the script they were given and not their performances, because they're all great. But yeah, Fright Night of the 80s is something that I never thought that I would enjoy, but I did, and it's on my list now.
I need to see that one, actually. That is on my list to watch.
Chris Sarandon, Ben.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I was a hipster for many years with my old movies. But the thing about my next movie,
I thought the official title was John Carpenter's The Thing.
well, I mean, that depends on. I don't think it says John Carpenter's The Thing in the opening credits, but I don't know. I watch this movie every year. That's my once a year movie. Not just because it's a good horror movie, it's just a good movie. And it's actually, I don't know how I'm going to feel watching it this year. Watching a movie about a bunch of guys who are stuck in a research facility together because they are being chased by not a virus, but it is a monster that acts very much like a virus, a very contagious virus. I think about what's going on in the world right now, and the first thing that comes to mind is I think it's one of the scientists talks about we should start preparing our own meals and we should only eat out of cans. And it's like, oh, that's ripped right out of today. And trying to keep the blood packs uncontaminated, and just the blood. We have to do the test. We have to test everybody, and then we have to quarantine everybody who's not infected, so we can figure out who is. And also, it is the ultimate practical effect horror movie.
Is that the one where the guy's chest like bursts open or whatever? And,
yes.
Like, the head spider jumps out or something like that.
Yeah, that is probably the most famous moment out of that movie.
Oh, it was the defibrillators. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. I wouldn't call that one a jump scare, but it was definitely like a whoa.
I know. I
whoa
just thought
moment.
it was gross.
It is. It's very gross. I love it. Gosh, what's the grossest part? That I think the grossest part is actually just seeing them cut their fingers open to draw the blood. That's actually what gets me. But and yeah, this is the thing actually also I think represents like what horror kind of goes through at the box office all the time, especially good horror movies. It was an absolute bomb at the box office when it launched, partly because it released the year after E.T. and everyone was like, aliens are cute and friendly now. And critics hated the movie too. But now it's like one of the most beloved horror movies ever made by, when critically. And I'm not the only person who watches this once a year. Like it's huge. It's a huge film. The remake, no, not the remake. The prequel is terrible. Just a mediocre script, but also they said they were going to use practical effects and they didn't. Did anyone else
practically effects?
did anyone else see the prequel?
Is that the one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
Yep.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, it was bad.
Was it just called The Thing still?
Yeah.
Like
it was just called The Thing again.
I watched that and the original Thing on the same night, and it was pretty awful. Thankfully, we watched the original Thing first, because then I didn't feel bad for dozing off on the other one.
I mean, the only part of the prequel that I like is the end, where they actually tie it back to the first movie. But, and I should also definitely acknowledge the 1951 version, which is very different. It's just one monster that's sort of like a plant monster, and they kill it with electricity in the end. But again, they're stuck up in the Arctic, confined in a little research station. It's a very claustrophobic movie, so perfect for these claustrophobic times. And I think they're actually going to try and make it again because it's based on a short story, and they found more like chapters of the original story. And so apparently there's more to do. So I'm not confident it's going to be good, but I'll probably see it.
To remake everything we can.
Oh, yeah. Hang on one second. Oh, I was going to show off my Halloween colored cat, but she is being shy. Oh, oh, say hi, Opie.
Oh. If I had my cat, we'd have total Halloween colors since she's black.
Opie is a sweetheart, but she hates people. Sarah, what is your next film?
My next film is a movie called Trick or Treat, which I believe came out in the 2000s sometime. So a little bit newer than the 80s, but not brand new. It's got some stars in it: Anna Paquin, Brian Cox. And the cool thing about this movie is, I mean, really, I think it was kind of created as like a love letter to Halloween, kind of classic horror movies, but it's 4 different stories.
An anthology. We were talking about those earlier.
Yeah, it's an anthology, but they kind of all end up tying together in an interesting way. And the other cool thing about the 4 stories in it is that they kind of encompass different types of horror movies. So there's kind of like one that's slashery, one that's more like ghosty, one that's more of like a creature story. And it's just like, I recently rewatched it with my husband and my stepson who hadn't seen it before. And they were pretty pleased with it. And I forgot like how good it was. It's just a really like it's creepy and it's scary, but it's kind of fun too. It's a really good mix, like for Halloween. I mean, it's definitely not for people that don't like horror. I mean, it's definitely horror, and I think it's R-rated, but it's definitely kind of more of a throwback to the kind of, I feel like the horror movies of the 80s, even if they were creepy, were kind of like fun and theatrical. And we've kind of moved into this more realistic horror, which has its good points, but it definitely is more of kind of like a fun, scary, out there, over the top movie.
I still need to see that one too. I've actually been borrowing it from a friend for quite a few years.
That's okay. I haven't seen The Thing, so I probably won't be watching it until we're out of this. I don't think I can take a claustrophobic movie.
Yeah. However, Sarah, I haven't seen Trick or Treat, but it should be noted that that is from director Mike Doherty, who directed one of the best movies you and I saw together at the theater, Krampus.
Oh, yes. I love when we get to Christmas movies at some point. Spoiler alert, that's my favorite Christmas movie.
Great Christmas. He also directed last year's Godzilla King of the Monsters, which is not a good movie, but it does have Godzilla. So I'll watch it. Jeanette, what do you have in store for us next?
Wow. I have 1996 The Craft. And what I like about this one is female protagonist, female antagonist, and men are just objects. And it's campy, it's funny in parts, it's a little creepy in parts, and it's, I don't know, it's everything the mid-90s was. So I feel like you could put on your flannel, put on your torn up jean shorts over your long johns, and put on your combat boots and watch a good movie.
Actually, I make a good point. There are not before The Craft, and really before this century, there weren't in a lot of horror movies with a female lead. They'd usually take second lead. Well, you might know. Well, I know that the Nightmare on Elm Street movies might have a few. I'm not sure. I can definitely tell you in the classic films they don't.
There's definitely, if you look at a lot of the horror, I mean, maybe they weren't always fleshed out, but I would say the slasher, the birth of the slasher genre in 70s and 80s, I mean, did typically have a woman that outsmarted the killer.
The final girl.
The final girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the
I think
term
The Craft makes the Scream franchise possible, which I was talking to my husband earlier, and I was like, we weren't focusing on teen movies before Clueless. We took a hiatus on that. And so Clueless kind of made The Craft possible, which kind of made Scream possible, which brought us back to slasher flicks and kind of a resurgence in that interest in horror again. Because there was a dry spell in the 90s, mid 80s to the mid 90s, where not much was coming out, and I don't know, everybody was interested in like histories and
it was like sequels to Friday the 13th, and that were getting like more and more kind of campy.
Jason,
and then Scream hit, and it was such a huge phenomenon.
Yeah.
I was actually looking through just my film library in general to try and find some of these films, and I got to the 90s, and it was like, oh my gosh, he had a dry spell here. Like, yeah, the 90s, all my 90s movies are like action films. So that was kind of what the 90s were. So thank goodness horror is back.
Well,
thank you, Scream.
They say horror is very popular anytime there's a lot of social anxiety. Yes. So maybe for a while under Clinton, we just didn't have as much financial anxiety or other things that would fuel our fears. But yeah.
Well, why there's somebody out right now.
Yep. Now it's everywhere I go, I see that creepy doll from Annabelle.
Oh, Annabelle.
What's funny is that the actual Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll.
Oh yeah, I saw
And
that.
it's not creepy at all. So they made her look really creepy because nobody's afraid of a Raggedy Ann doll.
I don't know. I was afraid of my Raggedy Ann dolls if they were like looking at me. Had to turn them around.
Yeah, dolls and dummies are actually pretty horrifying. Like,
Clowns.
and oh my gosh, clowns.
I just rewatched Valley Girl and I was horrified to see her curling up with her little clown doll to sleep. I was like, oh God. No.
Poltergeist, when the clown is like,
I mean, heck, we just got, we got 2 It films in the last couple of years. So yeah, clowns
those
are
pretty creepy.
yeah.
Pretty bad.
Yeah,
I
the first
loved
one.
the second one.
I did not see the second one yet.
I haven't seen
but
the second one either.
It's going to
I
happen.
don't want to say anything.
It's going to happen because that first one was great.
I'll only say this, and it's not a spoiler at all, but everything builds and builds and builds and builds. And then it releases a little bit of tension and then builds again. It's beautiful.
I think that just ruined it for me.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
done.
You'll never get to see it.
And it ruined the first one for me too. I'm done.
Have you
That's
not
it.
seen the first one either?
No, I've seen the first one. I love it.
Okay.
I'm just being facetious.
What other films can I ruin? I'm ready to hear from Andrea about her next film.
Sorry, my dog is in the room and I'm trying to get him to come over here. Shadow, come here. Come here. Come here. He's just
gonna
sitting
bring
right by
up-
my door. Let me see if I can get him. Nope, he just left. Okay, well, anyway. Sorry.
I was gonna say we can
Um,
start talking Cujo, but
Yeah, well, since Ben showed his cat, here's my dog as Beetlejuice last year.
Aw.
so cute.
He hated it, but it was so cute. Um, anyway, okay. My next one is actually what I was going to say the last time, which is Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't know if it's a Christmas movie or a Halloween movie, so I just say yes, it is. And I don't know. It's speaking of the 90s, I think it was one of the gem of the 90s. I think it's under the Disney umbrella because it's at the Disney parks. And it's a musical, so I like that. And I don't know. It's a lot of good stuff in it. It's a classic story. Like I've seen the same kind of plot in other movies where it's like this outsider sees a whole new world and he tries to bring that world to his world, and his world is like but just the Christmas gifts that the kids get from Halloween Town. I've actually always wanted that evil looking duck. I think it's super cool. The giant snake that eats the tree. I don't know. I think it's super cool. But the overall Tim Burton aesthetic of the film itself is really what makes Halloween. Like when I think of Halloween, I automatically think of Halloween Town in Nightmare Before Christmas. Like that's what I picture it looking like if it was Halloween all year round, with like, the curvy Tim Burton mansions and the mayor with the literal 2 faces, which because he's a politician, and like I don't know, it's just everything about it. I really like it. And Catherine O'Hara and Chris Sarandon, classic Halloween actors, and yeah, I really like that one.
Yeah, like I said, that's one that would be playing in the background of my life for months, and I still love it. I used to get terrible migraines, and I've always wanted to be able to just crack my head open and scratch my brain. Like that's got to feel good. Like every little thing in that film is just the little details are just wonderful, and all the unique monsters that are an homage to just about everything that came before it. Like you said, the 2-faced politician. There is a monster very much like the creature from the Black Lagoon in there. There's a werewolf. You've got a mad scientist and a Frankenstein thing going on here. It really is like the ultimate Halloween celebration movie.
It's got the boogeyman in it,
Also-
literal Oogie Boogie.
It also encompasses candy season almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could just play
It's
it. during candy season.
As I say, it's definitively a Halloween and a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And we've circled back to it launched the careers of everyone who went to Leica Studios and made Coraline. So I think it's actually the same director. I know Tim Burton has his name plastered on it, but I believe that Henry Selick actually directed the film.
Yeah, I think Tim Burton produced it, maybe had a hand in the story. I can't remember, but he definitely didn't direct it.
It's definitely got that Tim Burton look to it.
I know he didn't direct it, but it's the Tim Burton style because no one else can do the Tim Burton style other than Tim Burton. So it is, yeah. But
I think this is probably a good time to do a shout out to Danny Elfman for being on a lot of the films we've talked about.
Yeah.
As a composer. I mean, it's the music.
Well, isn't he Jack's singing voice too?
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Danny Elfman is still pretty much the master of the modern Halloween sound.
Did Ben go out?
I think he froze for a moment.
Ben, you're frozen.
That's a whole nother movie talk.
Yeah. I'm just waiting
I
for
know.
there he goes.
What
Am I
kind of
back?
Halloween movie would we make over Zoom?
There is a movie called Frozen. That's a horror movie. It came out in 2007 or something like that. So it's got the same name, but it's completely different movie.
Well, I just heard everything you all talked about, so apologies to everyone. I did it. I cut out. So
I was worried you were doing Halloween. You're just like, bah!
I was actually just saying, Danny Elfman really is still like the master of the Halloween sound when it comes to music. Like what other composer out there like is known for, you know, any type of Halloween sound? It's not John Williams, that's for sure.
The guy who composed the Halloween theme song. I don't know who did that one, but
that might actually be John Carpenter. He may have because he did a lot of his own scores. He composed a lot of his own scores for his movies. I think it was John Carpenter actually.
That's a creepy one for sure.
I think The Thing is like his only movie that he didn't score himself.
Score. He's like, I'm gonna edit that part out.
Beep. Oh my gosh, I'm on my last film, and I'm finally entering the 21st century. Wouldn't you know it? With a movie I've already talked about. Yay, Shaun of the Dead.
Cornetto trilogy.
Yes, the first Edgar Wright film I ever saw, and I think the first like big movie he ever did. Right? I think.
It's his first like international, because it hit cinemas over here too.
I remember it came to theaters and I stupidly didn't see it. And my cousin brought it over. She either brought it over or got it on Christmas Day. And we watched it on Christmas Day. Perfect Christmas Day movie for the family to watch. And I went out to Best Buy the next morning and bought it. Because like it is, we've talked about how, Sarah must be
She said she'd
rooms.
have to move it eventually. Yeah. Yep.
So we've already talked about how like, Romero changed the zombie genre, but no one else could figure it out. And even by the end of, the Romero films, there's one after Diary, right? That's not particularly beloved.
War of the Dead.
That might be it. I know the ones that are after Diary are not particularly beloved among his fans, but someone had to come around and like do something with the zombie genre. And comedy was absolutely the way to go. Really just poking fun. And welcome back, Sarah.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you guys. It was stealthy.
So yeah, like just taking everything about what Romero did and making a big joke out of it, but at the same time, really making a pretty serious zombie film, a pretty gory zombie film.
Well, and it's still a film that makes you think about things. I was introduced to it by students of mine when I was teaching script analysis of all classes, and students were wanting to talk about selective inattention. And so one of them brought a clip from Shaun of the Dead where they're throwing the records. and they're getting in the discussion of which records to throw, and how it kind of showed that they weren't paying attention to what was really important at the time, which was a zombie was coming toward them.
I think I like it because it's the most realistic depiction of what I feel a zombie apocalypse happening in real time would be. Because honestly, if I were Sean and I were stuck in a dead end job and all I wanted to do was drink and I didn't notice the world around me, which half of us don't, like, we wouldn't notice. And I feel like that's why it's so good, is because it's just like, how are these people not noticing? And it's at the same time, it's like, would you really notice what's going on too? I mean, my first thought wouldn't be zombies. It would be, coronavirus or something like that. But like, like that's why I really like it. Cause it's an average guy's point of view of a zombie apocalypse happening in real time who doesn't know anything about zombies.
Yeah. And just like Sean, we wouldn't be armed to the teeth and ready to fight
Right.
these zombies off. We would be grabbing, our cricket paddles or whatever. I guess I've got a broom. I don't know. I'm
Now
in trouble here.
like
We'd be going to the pub.
weapon of choice.
I mean, yeah. To your point about inattention, I was watching Slither last night, and literally just, the back door is literally just right next to me, and it's got a glass panel on it, and I actually wasn't thinking about the Slither monster. I was actually thinking, probably because it was a childhood terror, what if the creature from the Black Lagoon just bursts through that glass? And I'm just like, well, crap. I've got about half a second to bolt through the other side of the house, hopefully get my mom out of bed and save her. And sorry, cats, but I don't know if I can get to you.
That's Train to Busan, the opening sequences on the train, where zombies are just attacking people on the train platform. And I'm like, oh, geez, that could totally happen on the Sounder.
So yeah, wait a minute. I wasn't on my last film. I had one more.
I think we all have one more.
Yep. I can't math. I'm a theater person.
Math's overrated.
Yeah, it really is. What has math ever done for us?
Oh, it keeps me employed.
No,
work
there's definitely
for a
good uses.
STEM
I'm glad
division.
some people can do math because there's good
Yeah.
uses for it.
So yeah, Shaun of the Dead. In my opinion, one of the directions that horror is going to be going for the foreseeable future.
So there's
Oh,
a
no.
mosquito in my room and I'm following it.
Oh no, Sarah, the counterclockwise system is askew. Oh no.
Oh no! Oh yeah, I screwed it up by going.
Oh,
going
no.
silent.
We'll have to improvise now. We had a system and it has failed us.
Did you want me to go next?
Sure.
We're sticking with the order we've been going with. My next movie is another 80s little known gem. One of Neil Jordan's early movies called The Company of Wolves. Another great practical effects film. It's based on a short story by Angela Carter from a collection of short stories called The Bloody Chamber and other stories that are all like feminist dark retellings of fairy tales. So this is kind of a dark feminist take on the Little Red Riding Hood myth involving werewolves, and it's pretty like surreal and creepy, but I don't come across a lot of people that have seen it, but it's a really fascinating movie.
I'm adding it to my must-see list.
Yeah. It's if you like feminist, it's pretty cool. Just kind of looking at the underlying kind of sexuality of the Little Red Riding Hood myth as well. So it's a really interesting movie. I believe it has Angela Lansbury in it. and I think Stephen Ray is in it, who's in a lot of Neil Jordan's movies. But yeah, it's a great one.
I know you've talked to me about that one before, and that's one I definitely need to see. I'm always down for a good werewolf movie.
Yeah, and it's a very different, I feel like it's a really different take on werewolves than a lot of the other like popular werewolf movies. So it's kind of fun.
Jeanette, what is your final film?
My final film, going along with, well, I mean, to me, everything can be read with a feminist lens. So I'm going to take you back to 1988 with the film Night of the Demons. And it's the only one on my list that actually takes place during Halloween. So it's a bunch of teenagers going to a haunted mansion and one by one getting possessed by demons. And it definitely has the dichotomy of good girl and bad girl. And of course, the bad girl's the first one to get possessed by a demon, followed by the next girl who becomes bad by having sex with the other girl's boyfriend. And the only ones who survive are two virgins who walk off. And yeah, it's a fun little gruesome, typical 80s slasher kind of B-rated horror movie that has spawned several other little sequels to it for some weird reason. But the time I saw it, I thought it was probably the cheesiest film I'd ever seen. And since then, I've seen much, much cheesier horror, including Redneck Zombies, which gets a thumbs up from me. But yeah, I think that it's exactly the kind of horror movie that gives, was it Kevin Williamson who wrote Scream? Gives him all that fodder for bad girls who have sex die.
Yeah.
And it's that typical one. It has this great film, this great sort of story that's going on at the beginning and at the end with the old man with his candy that's rigged with razor blades, and he gets tricked into eating it at the end of the movie. So it's kind of fun.
Ooh, okay, yeah, that's one I need to add to my list.
I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, along with Night of the Comet and a couple other good gems.
Yeah, when you just look at the horror stuff that's available on Prime, they've got a pretty interesting list. Some of the Hammer movies in there, but just lots of stuff that you'd never think of. I think it's actually better than Netflix's offering of horror films. Netflix seems like it's got the most bottom of the barrel stuff. Unless they actually get something that came to theaters. But yeah, Netflix's offerings are, I feel like, not great. Some of Prime's aren't great, but Prime at least I think goes into stuff that's interesting. Stuff that I wouldn't think of, like that.
Yeah.
So Andrea, what is the last film you have for us tonight?
Okay, mine is in keeping with the Andrea aesthetic, so we're gonna bring it back to comedy. But we're gonna reverse the feminism, unfortunately. But that's just how this movie is. It is 1974, 76. I don't know years. 1970s. Young Frankenstein. I love Young Frankenstein. It should be Young Frankenstein because that's his name. But of course, Gene Wilder, fantastic. Plays a crazed scientist a little too well. It freaks me out a little bit how good he is. And of course, Peter Boyle as the monster makes me laugh every time. When he sits on the teeter-totter with a little girl and all you see is just him go.
Yep.
So funny. And Cloris Leachman is probably my favorite character in that. And yeah, I think it does a really good job of satirizing the source material. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, I know it's kind of like a sequel, but it's pretty much satirizing what it originally was supposed to do. And I like that it's in black and white, which is a nice little touch. And I really don't have any complaints about it. Oh yeah, Madeline Kahn, she's amazing as always. Yeah, there's just it's super good. And the scene that always makes me laugh the most is when Kemp and Frankenstein are playing darts, and he keeps moving his arm, and he like shoots all the darts, and they cut to the car, and all the darts are in the car, and the wheels are flattened. It's just, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of gems, but I really like Young Frankenstein. It still has a very Halloween aesthetic, and it's really funny. So it's my type of movie.
I would say it doesn't just satirize its source material well; it satirizes it better than any other. It's so obvious how much Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks love those old films. I'd already seen all the old films by the time I saw Young Frankenstein, so every single gag in that movie meant so much more to me because I knew exactly what they were going for. It's like with the darts. It's like, yep, that's ripped. That dart scene is ripped right out of Son of Frankenstein, only without gags. But he still has the wooden arm in Son of Frankenstein. The little girl, in the original Frankenstein, he throws her in the lake and she drowns. And thankfully, they managed to find a way to make it happier. But yeah, I don't think there is a better love letter or ever will be a better love letter to the old Frankenstein films than Young Frankenstein. I guess that leaves me with my actual last film. I guess I had actually kind of gone in order of when these films were released, so I'm going backwards now to the 80s again with Evil Dead 2, which is my favorite of the Evil Dead trilogy. I actually saw them in reverse order. Saw Army of Darkness first, then Evil Dead 2, then Evil Dead. And thankfully, you really don't have to know the plots of any of these movies to get the other ones. Because so Evil Dead 1 is actually a pretty straightforward, serious, but very low budget cabin in the woods type of movie, which actually a lot of those same kind of tropes we've been talking about earlier, where the bad girl dies, the bad guy dies, and all we have left is Bruce Campbell. And then for some reason in Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi said, I want to make a sequel, but I don't necessarily want it to feel like you have to have seen the first film. And also I want to make it really funny. And it genuinely is an absolute laugh riot just to see Bruce Campbell doing these Three Stooges shticks while being assaulted by all of these, once again, practical effects. The eyeball in the mouth is just hysterical. And the fact that you can, typically we'd like to knock films for being able, because you can see the effects, but in Evil Dead 2, like the fact that you can see the wire that eye is attached to, it works out just great because it's still gross, but two, you're also just laughing at it so much. I think it's the elk. The laughing elk is my favorite bit in the whole film, and a bit that actually made it into the Evil Dead musical. So that was great. I love that Evil Dead the musical really just sort of takes 1 and 2 and just mashes them into one fun story. And then of course everyone loves Army of Darkness because it's the most ridiculous one. But really, yeah, it's just Evil Dead in medieval times. It's funny, sure, but two I really think is where Sam Raimi really nailed it, and I wish that he would do more horror films, because he's only done one in the last several years, and that was Drag Me to Hell, which is another not quite as funny as Evil Dead, but it still has its moments. It's a great one, and it's got that absolute surprise ending. But I kind of want him to, do something more horror centric again once he's done with Doctor Strange. If he actually makes Doctor Strange a horror film, that'd be great too. But I know Marvel actually Scott Derrickson left Doctor Strange because he wanted to make it a horror movie, and Marvel was like,
I thought I read that it was going to be like the scariest of the Marvel movies or something.
I hope it is. I really do, because Doctor Strange has got some really crazy, scary villains. And, you know, we could finally be seeing Marvel's version of hell. And here we are talking about Marvel now, as we seem to do in every single episode. Stupid popular films.
They've definitely kind of dominated movies for the last, 10 or 12 years.
So if we get a horror film out of it, that'd be great. Oh, wow. That was a lot of movies we talked about. And except for Nightmare on Elm Street, no overlap. So that's cool. That was cool that we really had some very different aesthetics going into this. So right now we're kind of in a lull, as it were, in terms of just movies in general. But when, we do start seeing more movies, what do you want to see for the future of horror, or whatever your particular genre of Halloween film happens to be? This is very open. Anyone can start in on this.
I want more practical effects. Honestly, I think they just look so much better than CGI. And I mean, it's 2020 or probably 2021 when movies start again, but it's not like we don't have the technology to make it look realistic. Like, motion capture is hit or miss, but like, I feel like if you're gonna go for blood or gore, you gotta make it a practical effect, because it's not as fun. Like what Sarah was saying about the Nightmare on Elm Street remake with the fake blood, like why? Like the best part of those horror movies is seeing the blood get on the characters. Like the blood just spurts out. But if it's fake blood, then it's not fun. I mean, this is a personal complaint, I think, but just when I watch some of those horror movies, like the old slasher movies versus the new slasher movies, and I'm much more going like with the old slasher movies and the new slasher movies, because I'm like, it looks fake.
Well, part of it too is, when they had to do like the practical effects, I mean, it was a lot of work. So yeah. I feel like it resulted in movies that were more atmospheric. And sometimes when you watch a lot of those old like originals, like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, and even like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when you go back and watch them, you're like, there's actually only like 2 or 3 bloody scenes. Like most of this movie is all kind of left to your imagination. You really don't see the stuff that you see in like the remakes they've done in like the 90s and the 2000s. And I feel like that just sometimes, especially in horror, I think it's what you don't see is often a lot more scarier, because then your imagination fills in. So going back to that too, just not needing to like up the gore factor in each movie or do like the torture porn, like, it's, I think going back to like just really like creating the atmosphere and deciding what you need to see and what you want to leave to the audience's imagination is something I would like to see come back. I've also been really enjoying the like social justice horror movies like Get Out and Us, and I think I'd like to see more of that too.
Yeah, I definitely want to see more BIPOC filmmakers making horror. And I like when I watched Get Out, and I haven't seen Us yet. I have it queued up on my Amazon Prime. I've purchased it. I'm ready to go. I just haven't found the time. But Get Out to me was so like a Hitchcock film, suspenseful, tight, and just, I don't know, it just hit so many buttons for me. Like there weren't a lot of big special effects for the scares. There were some jump scares, but it was psychological and horrifying. And I want to return to that. And one of the things that scares me the most are things that could happen. So like one of the movies on my list that didn't make the top 5 was Pet Sematary, the original one, just because of the ankle cutting at the end of the movie. That had me jumping off the edge of my bed for a long time, even though I knew boxes were under my bed and there's no way Gage could be under there with a scalpel. But I like the dead-eyed stare of zombies and ghosts. I like things appearing in mirrors. I want to see those kinds of things happening that are just creepy and spooky and get into your head and live there for a while.
Oh, I know something I want to see less of also is movies with twists. Not every movie has to have a twist, because when you're relying too much on your twist, the rest of the movie sucks. Like a good twist, like M. Night Shyamalan used to do, are like tier. Like The Sixth Sense, I think, is a perfect movie with the twist. Whereas something like, I don't know, I haven't even seen any recent ones like that, but there have been like all the ones that have come out recently, like Fantasy Island. I don't know if anybody saw that one, that terrible one with like Lucy Hale. It's the worst thing. The whole movie was based around the twist, and the twist not only made no sense, but it ruined the entirety of the film, because we knew there was a twist and we didn't know what it was, and when it was revealed to us, we're like, what? So for me personally, I don't think every horror movie or suspense movie needs to have a twist to it. I think you can just rely on the storytelling itself to tell a scary story or a suspenseful story versus, oh my God, he was dead the whole time. With, Sixth Sense did it first, but like, just that, like, I want to watch a movie for the plot. I don't want to watch a movie for a terrible twist, because then the whole movie is like ruined. The Others is another one with a really good twist, but
Others is a good one.
Yeah,
both of those are
that was almost on my top 5.
But
both
yeah, so like
PG-13.
less relying on a twist to tell your story versus just telling a story.
I like the not having to selectively showing things. Like both The Others and The Sixth Sense, they showed really creepy images for a short period of time, sort of like The Birds, where they show the one man who's been pecked to death, but then they never show any other blood or guts, and we've seen it, and so we're scared. I like that, and that doesn't require a twist at all. So
Exactly.
Yeah, I want to see. Plot is a big thing. I want to see characters, not just caricatures. Less reliance on tropes. The Virgin. I don't want to say it, but the black guy dies first. That's a terrible trope. Tropes are, if you're going to do a trope, either make a spin on it that's original and works, or I know we can't get away from tropes, but new tropes, something new, but characters before caricatures. On the flip side of the gore argument, if you're going to do gore, you have to be doing it Sam Raimi style and doing it for copious amounts that are just exhausting and funny, because that's the only way that ridiculous gore works anymore. It's just as unsettling to me to get stabbed in the shoulder and not have it still to see that on screen, to get stabbed in the shoulder, it still stings, and you don't have to see blood flying out everywhere. But yeah, practical effects, for sure. Like I said last night, I was watching Slither, and I think there are definitely exceptions to the rule. The monster in that one has to, it's this big lumbering slug monster, and it has to flee into the woods quickly. And obviously, poor Michael Rooker, who is actually wearing this giant, prosthetic on him, cannot do that of his own accord. So, sure, touch that up with some effects.
I think the movie monsters in some cases have to be CG, but when they don't have to be, then don't make them.
Yeah. Sometimes you do, but like I said, John Carpenter's The Thing, so much better than CG The Thing. So much better.
When you finally watch Night of the Demons, we should talk, because at the end you'll be happily surprised, I hope, of who survives. Back in '88.
Oh, and you know what, Jeanette, when you talked about you mentioned something. Oh, the razor. You mentioned the razor. The one that always gets me is even though just about everything else in that movie is aged poorly, is the pencil in Evil Dead. It's basically the same as the pencil in the Joker uses in The Dark Knight. It's except with blood. And it hurts. It hurts my poor ankle so badly.
Yeah, I used to look at Fangoria all the time back when we had Walden books in malls. So I could spend hours sitting there looking at practical special effects. So hopefully they'll bring that back. Maybe we need to bring.
Fangoria. Yeah. Yeah, I think I've still got a couple issues of Fangoria somewhere out in the garage, and I think I may even have some copies of Famous Monsters of Filmland.
My dream is to do a splatter show on stage. So one day.
Hey,
you actually need the splatter row stuff, because every time I've seen Evil Dead the musical and sat in the splatter row, it didn't matter. So.
I've
Yes.
long wanted to produce some Grand Guignol style theater.
Yep, Sarah and I have talked about that several times.
And I actually did. One of my favorite theater experiences, which happened a few years back, was I got to be in a stage version of Night of the Living Dead, playing a zombie, which was horrific, getting the makeup put on and taken off. But it was super fun to be a zombie and wander through the audience, like.
And I saw that.
Yeah, it was fun.
And
I remember working at the Seattle Children's Theater when they did Night of the Living Dead, and it was pretty amazing. Zombies in the audience, but then also the set designer had designed the house to literally crack apart. So zombies were crawling through the seams of the walls. So it was a box set the whole time, and then suddenly the house just shifted and zombies were crawling in windows and in cracks, and it was beautiful.
There's a lot of fun horror stuff you can do on stage. Maybe once we're out of COVID someday, we can do more.
Oh yeah. I'm always game for. We all know I'm always game to do a Frankenstein or a Dracula. So.
How about some Woman in Black?
Oh, the woman. So I have a question. Is that the same story as the movie?
Pretty much.
Okay. I only ask because I enjoyed the movie. It's a Hammer film, but I enjoyed it up till the end. I did not like the end. I didn't think it had to be a sad ending.
I can't remember. I've seen it on stage, and the only thing I really remember vividly is it was at Act Theater in the Round, and at one point in the staging, the two men are talking about the ghost, and she's walking the outer perimeter of the audience. And so if you missed her, you didn't see her, but I saw her and had to watch her walk around until she was behind me. And that was the creepiest feeling I've ever had in a live audience experience, was having the ghost walk behind where I was sitting and knowing she was there.
Jeanette, I'm going to tell you about one of the greatest jump scare experiences I've ever dealt with in theater. So when I was in college, I got to be part of an original play that a friend wrote called Convention, which is about these four office workers who all share the same cubicle. So you can't actually see them when they're just ducked down inside their cubicle. They just pop up whenever they have to talk. And you realize as this story goes on, that these four men never actually leave the office. I played their boss, who is merely a PA. And I would find some excuse to keep them in the office, and they just sleep there in their cubicle overnight. And then one of them would finally start to question, like, what's going on? Why are we here? Why do we never go home? What is a woman? They start to realize that they have no knowledge of what the outside world is. And one of them leaves finally, but he's gone the next morning and never shows up again. And when the next guy tries to leave, you actually find out what's going on. he exits the office and he enters a labyrinth. And the labyrinth is guarded by the Minotaur. And when we originally staged it, it was just in a traditional theater, and the Minotaur actually came down the aisle. But, the audience had no idea the Minotaur was coming. So those first people in the back row got to see the Minotaur up close. And we had, we tried to get, smoke coming out of his nostrils and, drool. It was a really cool costume. But it was like, that was the coolest thing. And I've never done a show that had anything quite so horrific since. Not even Frankenstein had the Minotaur. So yes, let's do a horror show,
The Lion King hyenas coming through the audience scared the crap out of my dad. So that was fun.
I've long wanted to do a 70s slasher flick style production of Titus Andronicus. I feel like that would be super fun.
So much blood.
I volunteer as dramaturg.
I actually have always wanted to figure out a way to make a werewolf work on stage, because I can't think of any werewolf plays. We've done Frankenstein and Dracula are like the two classics that are, I won't say done to death, because they're not done to death on stage. No horror show is done to death on stage.
Maybe we need Wolfman the ballet.
Unfortunately, we can't use the Wolfman because that is actually a copyrighted character.
The Werewolf Man.
The
or the Wolf Woman.
Werewolf.
There.
Be an opera.
Yeah. Universal actually did try to do a female werewolf film in the late 40s, and it was bad because they didn't commit to the bit. It was just someone disguised as a wolf with a garden rake slashing at people. And it was all, hey, you're a werewolf. And that they were trying, it was a gaslighting movie, basically. Trying to trick,
no one will notice, right?
Trying to trick the leading lady into believing that she's killing people. I was like, oh, come on. Give me a real werewolf. Anyway, we've blathered on, as usual, a lot. So it's time for some trivia. Bum, bum, bum. So, oops. I lost everyone. There you are.
The fancy picture, though.
Yeah. That's me doing radio show. So this was really difficult because I know that we all have completely different aesthetics when it comes to what we like in our Halloween and horror films. So I tried to make this as fair as possible when it comes to trivia. And even then, it's probably just going to have to be a wild guess for everybody. So the question is, which of the following 4 films is the #1 best reviewed horror film on Rotten Tomatoes? Is it The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, A Quiet Place, Psycho, or Us?
Sorry, can you read them one more time?
The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, A Quiet Place, Psycho, and Us.
To the highest rated on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's not necessarily the highest rated, but it is the #1 in their ranking. So it may not be the one that has 100%. It could be the one that has the most positive reviews.
Oh, okay. So the highest percentage on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, sort of.
Out of those 4.
Out of those 4.
Yeah, okay.
I love Cabinet, but I think it's A Quiet Place. I think more people have seen it.
We have one for
Yeah,
Quiet Place.
I'm gonna guess A Quiet Place also.
My gut's telling me Psycho. I'm gonna go with that. I think I'm wrong, but I'm gonna say it.
All right. So I have stumped the panel tonight. Sarah, you've missed your first. You're finally
I
giving
knew it
people a
would
chance to
happen
catch up.
eventually.
So the answer actually is, even though it's not at 100%, is Us.
Wow.
Because
That was gonna be
and
my
you
second guess.
your theories were right regarding like because Psycho and Nosferatu or not Nosferatu Caligari don't have as many reviews. Us is at 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's got over 500 reviews. A Quiet Place only has. Oh, I lost you again. Haha. I'll be right back. A Quiet Place only has 372, but it's at 96. So Caligari has 100%, but it's only got a handful of reviews. So
Way to stump
yeah,
us.
I stumped you all.
I have one though.
Andrea is at 1. Sarah, you're still at
I'm
wait,
at 3.
You're at 3. That's right. You're at 3. Dea is poor Dea is still at 0, even though she's been on the show
she
3
didn't get one
times.
for the Psycho episode.
Nope.
Darn.
And Marit is also at 1. Jeanette, I hope to have you back on again so we can get you on the board.
Yes,
And also just so we can talk film.
of course.
Well, that is our show for the evening. It's been a blast. We will have more Halloween coming up. I am probably going to go all in next week and just do an entire episode about Hammer because I am a nerd. So tonight on our panel, we had Sarah Moore. You can say bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Andrea Gordon
Hasta luego.
and Jeanette Sanchez Eisenman. Thank you for joining us for your first show. And I am Ben Stahl, and it's been a pleasure as always. Have a good evening.